Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
There it goes. Boom. They moved the buttons. So now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the ticket. Very demure, very mindful.
Also, you know what else? They added this summary feature. Everything's got AI integrated into it now. So they're gonna be like summarizing this. In fact, I don't even know if AI is smart enough to summarize some of our exchanges, but we're gonna try it.
So AI is gonna have to be on top of its game.
I think so.
My question for you is do they summarize once you press record, or do they summarize pre-record?
Well,
do they
that's
read
a good question.
Lips? Do they?
Yes, we will have to find out. We will have to find out about that for sure.
Oopsie doopsie.
Although with some of my conversation, we might need not artificial intelligence, we might need artificial stupidity just to make sense out of some of the stuff that I say. So
oh goodness. It is an interesting, I know we're kind of laughing about it, but it is interesting. Like that feels like a whole nother layer of something that we need to think about and consider in some aspects in regards to being mindful of how we're speaking and, things that we're communicating and all. So it's fascinating. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think about it. I'm a little afraid, but it's kind of handy, but I'm a little afraid. That's where I go. Happy Muse Day, Dan.
Happy Muse Day.
I've never been diagnosed with having, attention deficit. But there are times when I feel like I do a little bit. So sometimes you have to like pull me in and like keep me on track because I get distracted and I can go off on rabbit trails. So don't mention anything that I find at least at all intriguing because I'll go down the path. All right.
Yep.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So we got just 1 week left of our politics series, then we're back to Revelation, and I like how the series has gone, and hopefully we'll end it with a bang this week. So
absolutely, one more of these, then back to Revelation, and then Christmas. Like what in the world? We were getting into the nitty-gritty of the Christmas series in our meeting this week, and I was like, it's still hot outside. I can't put my mind there. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you think so far ahead. It's
well, first of all, I don't. That the Christmas series is a real stretch for me, for sure. And in this year, so this is like the fifth time that I've done the Christmas series, and this year it was particularly early because the creative team had some ideas that they wanted to for us to consider, like in April, and so our tree was still up. I mean, come on. So
calm down. But that's what I want to say to people. Calm down.
That's right. I agree. But I will say that I really have enjoyed the Christmas series, how they've turned out, but they've been, every year I do it, it's tougher to come up with a different angle, and but I am also excited for this year. I like the angle, and we'll maybe talk about that as we get closer, but it's a little tease is it's called Seeking Christmas, is sort of the tentative title for the series, and I think it'll be pretty good.
I was actually going to say, I was going to somehow try to sneak the word in seeking to see if you wanted to tease that out, but you went, so that's good.
Yeah.
Seeking Christmas. Awesome. But we're not there yet. We're still in political distortions, examining our heart postures. And Greg was back this week and talked to us about verbal pollution. Was that his title, or was that Danny Jingles?
No, that's his title. In fact, my hope would be that you would just title it The Imperative, kind of like you and I did.
That's what we did.
That's right. We know what's going on here. You know, Greg's sort of out of the loop. We
have to rein him in. we have to guide him and show him the way. Let your gentleness show.
Yeah.
fair with one another. Verbal pollution.
Yeah,
Like, what are you
right.
doing, dude?
That's right. Yeah, yeah, totally.
What was
Wild
the
man.
imperative?
Oh, the imperative is that's a good question. I don't even know what we started with.
I know
Um,
things go such.
yeah,
I'm sorry, I caught you
yeah,
off guard.
yeah. You did catch me off guard,
Mm,
but the problem is that there's a few of them that could be
uh-huh.
related to language. Controlling your
Yeah,
tongue and do not say raka and all that
yeah,
kind of. There's a bunch of them that are related to this, and he sort of tapped into all of them. And
yeah.
the fact of the
He
matter
had
is
many
he
to
brought it
choose from.
together. Yeah, and he
Oh,
brought it together
absolutely.
well. So
Yeah. He
yeah,
had many to choose from, so he could have followed the pattern set before him, but he's a
he could
rebel
have.
rouser.
That's
So
right.
he said that.
Always,
But
always has to do it his own way.
but yeah, he did. But actually, yeah, verbal pollution, he brought all of those together really nicely. And I'm anxious to hear your summary and your thoughts. I want to know how you were convicted by Greg's sermon, Dan. Let's spend our time today talking about that.
How I was convicted?
Yes. I feel
Well,
like that could be the bulk of our conversation.
yeah, right. Right. Well, how about this? Let me propose this. Should I do the summary first
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
then we could talk about the
Oh,
conviction? Is that
okay. Yeah, I guess that's
okay?
probably what the people expect is a
Yeah,
summary
well, maybe. Yeah,
first. I mean, it is world famous.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's getting there.
It is.
I bet there's dozens of people who know about the summary. So
Dozens upon
ev- e-
dozens.
every revolution starts with its first dozen.
I'm telling you. I'm
That's
telling
right.
you. We're on our way. All right. Get
All
it.
right. All right. The sermon was called Verbal Pollution, and it is in our series on heart postures, political heart postures. And the series is called Political Distortions. And what we have done is just to refresh people's memory. Is we started off with sort of some big picture discussion about, the kingdom of God versus the kingdom of the world, and spiritual warfare and things like that, just some of these bigger, broader concepts. And then 2 3 weeks ago, I kind of transitioned us into a more focused look at these imperatives in the New Testament, where the God is speaking to us as individuals, saying this is what you should be focusing on. Do this, do that, do this. And through doing those things, I believe that's what sort of revolutionizes our hearts, and it changes our posture toward the world in a way that is effective for what God wants to do in the world. And I kicked us off with let your gentleness show, and then you talked about bearing with others, and that patience that's required for that. Greg this week is talking about our the imperatives around how we use our language and how we speak, and he named it verbal pollution because we find ourselves in a time period where there is a particularly high amount of uh, I hate the word toxic. It's just so overused, but just a lot of for more nuance there, I feel like the spirit of the age is one of denigration, where we're denigrating others but not just pure denigration, but it's tactical denigration, where so much of how we speak to others is part of this agenda that we each carry around, and that is to make our side look good and their side look bad, and that I think uh, flies in the face of how we are supposed to speak to others in the kingdom of God. And so Greg kind of starts off by saying, you know, he's really caught up by, Gandhi's kind of challenge to be the change that you want to see in the world. And of course, we do have some say so. We get to vote, and we can talk to people about our opinion about different political things, but our real power is in our own life. That's where we have our most say so. And that's also why I think the imperatives are so important in the New Testament, because they're tapping into that fact that, look, this is where your power is, not in these global sort of ideologies. And so he kind of starts us off, and at first, I admit, I was a little worried that Greg was going to go on a rabbit trail about climate change, but he actually used a pretty good analogy about CO2 and how, when we put this stuff out there, this CO2 in the air, it actually traps heat and it compels us to use more CO2, and it's sort of a self-feeding cycle. And he said that our language is the same way. We may think this is just an innocent sort of dig at somebody, but it changes the stew, and it heats up the soup, and we're all swimming in it. And so I thought that was a good analogy. And so he asks right off the front, can we be a people who covenant to not contribute to this verbal pollution? Because it's so tempting, especially when your opinion and your views have been polluted or have been denigrated by other people. Then there's this compulsion to want to get back at those people and to kind of oh yeah, and then share your own thing to denigrate them. And so Greg challenges us to let's covenant to not even participate in that. And I think that's a great challenge to kick us off. And then he just jumps into the text, and he starts looking at these verses, and he highlights 3 verses. The first one is James 3:1-6, and this is James talks about controlling our tongue, and I love the language that James uses. And first of all, I just love the book of James. I would love to do a series on the book of James. But he says, in the same way that like a big, mighty ship, I mean, it's massive. If you've seen these big boats on the sea, they're really big. And yet all of that is controlled by like this rudder that's the size of a tennis racket. I mean, that's a little bigger than that, but it's just, relative. It's just this little tiny thing. And yet the whole thing is steered by that. And, a forest fire can start with one little spark. And I love that, those metaphors. And then the second verse he looks at is in Matthew 5, where Jesus kind of sets this really high standard about how we speak and how we engage with others, especially in a situation that we're in now, where we're in this polarized culture, and it's so tempting to give digs and to humiliate and to tear down the other side. And Jesus is like, if you even say "you fool" to them, if you even say "racha," which is just this made up word to be negative to this in this ambiguous way to the other side, if you even say that, then you are responsible for that, and there are going to be consequences. And so everything that we say, Jesus says, matters. In fact, not only does it matter, not only are there consequences to it, but the third verse Greg shares is Matthew 12:36-37. And he says that, what we speak reveals what our heart is made of. And so a mouth that speaks vileness reveals a heart that is vile. And so that should be a motivation to, when we see what we're speaking, to assess that and say, what does that say about my heart? And so, in other words, words are really important. And then he looks at kind of some specific kind of warnings about our language, and it relates to slander and gossip. And slander is sort of a bigger category, where you are speaking in a denigrating way toward others. Gossip is just when you do it behind their back. And it's interesting because he looks at Romans 1:29-30 and Titus 3:1. Titus 3:1 says, slander no one, but instead do good and be peaceable and gentle, which were the 2 imperatives that you and I looked at. And so instead of slandering, change your motivation, because slander, there's a motivation when you slander. And so I love how in Titus he says, no, be motivated to be peaceable and gentle instead. Be motivated to do good to the other persons, because slander is always motivated to do bad. And so I thought that was a great verse. And then gossip. I loved how he noted that in Romans 1:29 and 30, Paul puts gossip right alongside of murder as that this is important. I know it's sticks and stones and words can never hurt me, but yeah, they can. In fact, gossiping is just as bad, at least in some sense, as murder. And in fact, even the language used there, and we can talk about this too if you want, but one of the words used or translated as gossip is diablos, which is also translated as the devil. And I think that's interesting. And the fact that we tend to think of our words as being not that big of a deal, I think is the result of a pretty profound campaign by the enemy to desensitize us to the importance of what we say. And so, and then Greg just finished by kind of going over the series prayer, and he just noted how you can apply each of those elements of the series prayer to our language and what we say. And then the last thing I'll say in the summary, which I kind of skimmed over, and there's a lot of stuff I skipped, but one thing I just think is important, just to again show the relevance of it, is he noted that speaking is part of what makes us in the image of God. God spoke creation into existence, and which is just fascinating that the text specifies the manner in which creation came to be, and that is it was spoken. And Jesus is called the Lord, and he's called the Son of God, and he's called the Christ, and he's called the King. But John really focuses on this idea that he is the Word, and he is the spokenness of God, and that's the same breath that God speaks and does all of this majestic stuff is the same breath that he breathes into humanity. And we have that living God, that the breath of the living God inside of us, and we use that breath when we speak. And I just think that is so radical and so amazing, and we tend to lose touch of the majesty of our own words. And I think a sermon like this is a good wake-up call that look, this is you have something precious here. And so that's my summary. Skipped a bunch of stuff, but the summary still went a little bit long. So what did you think of Greg's sermon, Shawna?
I hated it.
We were all saying that, we were corporate. We're like, yeah, boy, Shawna needs this one. Holy cow.
I know. I was just like, dadgum. Like I can't listen. I had my time of being convicted and having to study for patience and have that be, my sermon. I should have been in the clear. It's the way I felt. No, you were so right. It is such a good reminder. I've actually done a little bit of devotional study just for my own personal stuff about the spoken word. And I think I even taught on it, but anyway, that doesn't matter. Just, the power of when it talks in scripture about God spoke and this happened, God spoke and this happened. And the fact that we have that in us and just the power of our words. And it was a really, I'm not going to say a good reminder. I'm going to say it was a sobering reminder of the power of our words, that they can bring blessing or they can bring curses. They can heal or they can wound. They can unite or they can divide. They can build up or they can tear down. They can bring together or they can tear apart. It's just like words are really, really powerful. Mm-hmm. I just didn't feel like he needed to go so hard. Like, I don't feel like he needed to all the scriptures and all the examples, back off. No. As you can tell, it was, and he warned us, this was convicting because I'm not going to lie, Dan Kent, it feels good to feel like you know the truth about something and you're on the right side of something and someone who is saying the opposite is, it feels good to be like, they're an idiot. They're a bozo. What the heck? It feels good. I'm sorry. And it's not supposed to. It's not supposed to. And so clearly, the Lord is doing a continual work in Shawna. And yeah, this was just,
Wow.
it was sobering and necessary and needed and good and annoying and all of the things.
Yeah. Well, let me just qualify the situation here. I was kidding when I said the corporate team called you out. That was a joke, just so people know.
It was a joke. It
Yeah,
was a
Shawna
joke.
is,
Yes.
yes,
Everyone.
Shawna. And I will say that, Shawna, I often see you working really hard to build other people up and to listen to another's perspective. And you working at the welcome desk, you encounter people in rare moments, and I've seen you firsthand speak and use your voice in a way that is constructive, even in really tricky situations. And so I just want to be clear that we were kidding about that. So.
No, yes, we were. Yeah. And this is just me being real about my response to the sermon. One thing I thought of too, and you're probably like, duh, Shawna, that was the point, is that with these imperatives, they just all tie really nicely together. And
well, duh.
I know, right? And it's not like picking grapes off a vine and like, oh, I want to eat this one and I'm going to eat this one, but I'm going to leave that one. No, they all kind of, it's like a full package. We don't get to, I'll take a little bit of gentleness, maybe some patience, but this, the way I use my words, I'm gonna leave that there. Like, no, like this is kind of, they all go together. And so that was clever, Dan. Way to go. But they tie together really nicely. And I don't know, they kind of feel interdependent on one another. Like, I don't know that you can be mindful of the words coming out of your mouth if you're not bearing with one another, if you're not letting your gentleness show, if you're not seeking to unify and to love others, like and that's kind of like the story of the New Testament in many ways. Like Greg said, a focus is on our character, it is on our heart and guarding that. And I too do love the Gandhi quote, and while he was not a believer that we know of in any way, man, what a powerful, like, be the change. We are to be what we hope to see in others and in the world. And it's kind of hypocritical to want something different than what we're embodying and reflecting out. So it was a good sermon. I just I need to come up for air sometimes in between convictions. How about that?
That makes sense. Yes.
Oh goodness. I liked your usage of the phrase tactical denigration. That was really good. Yeah, because toxic is used all the time. So yeah, tactical denigration, because if you think about it, that is such the temperature of these waters, since we keep talking like that, the waters that we're swimming in, it is all about this denigration of others, this dehumanizing of others, this I don't agree with you. And it doesn't just stop with I don't agree with you. It's I don't agree with you, so you need to be torn down limb from limb, where there is nothing remaining, where no one could ever side with you or believe you or agree with you. It's not the way that we should be behaving. That's the way it's going on in the world, but we're supposed to be representing something different. And how we do that and go about that matters. And I think that's, again, I'm going to say why I feel like these imperatives are so important and so valuable.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I also appreciate your point about how they are all related. And that's why I'm glad that we're doing this series, but it's also why I want to kind of keep looking at the imperatives as we go forward, even when we get out of this series, because I do think that they are very much related. It's sort of like, that how instead of, toxic, I want to specify and talk about tactical denigration, because that puts more handles on what that toxicity is. In the
Mhm.
same way, I think that we can use phrases like Christ-likeness really loose. But when you actually say let your gentleness show, now you're putting handles to what that Christ likeness is. and
Yeah.
and I think that how you use your language, that's also what that Christ likeness looks like, and it's a way of making Christ likeness tangible and operational. You can, okay, now I know what to do to actually get to that. And they are all related in the sense that they're part of that Christ-like heart that we are called to manifest in our lives.
Yeah.
So
I feel like Dan, I feel like you should write a book, and I think you should
yeah,
call it Smart to the Heart. I
yeah.
think there's an idea there that just may percolate a bit,
Did
may
I
have
did
some
I
legs on it.
I didn't know I shared. Did I share that on here?
Yeah, to our
Oh,
premium
okay.
subscribers
Oh,
last
that's
week.
right. That's right. The premium. I forgot about the premium subscribers. That's right. Yeah. Yeah,
This is the
I
kind
have
of juicy content they
all
get.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping to have the book proposal done in October, and we'll see.
I
So
love it.
we'll see if they like it and want to publish it. So,
Awesome. I'm hoping that I get like a friends and family like sneak peek,
of course.
maybe, early release copy or something
Of
that I will
course.
fully purchase, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna need this book, I think, obviously. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just some of the facets of what Greg was saying. Because people, when they hear this, and hopefully the Holy Spirit brings a bit of conviction, so that the point isn't just to get down on yourself and think you're a loser. The point is so that the things that are not of God are burned away from us, so that we more and more reflect the character of and heart of Christ. And so, but as people begin to look at this and dissect this for their lives, like questions will come up about, well, what does this mean about if I swear? Because Greg did talk quite a bit about his dad
Mhm.
and swearing. Or
Yeah.
what does this mean if I just really do think someone's an idiot? Or you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or if you have a response that and less than loving words come out of your mouth. And so and there is no way for us to say, well, in this situation do this and in this situation do
Right.
that. I think this is again a heart posture
Mhm.
that we should be working to cultivate. So I didn't know if you wanted to tap into any of
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Well, yeah, definitely. I will. I do want to talk about Diablos also, so let's come back to that after
Okay.
this. But I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents lived in an apartment complex in New Hope, Minnesota, and I don't know why I'm sharing the details. It doesn't matter. It's just an apartment building, and I. My family, they all swore and used these words, but they were also very much like controlling me, saying that you can't talk like this, and so do as I say, not as I do, sort of thing. But um my grandpa, boy, he could also swear really good, and he was like, there was something very melodramatic about those moments when my grandpa would swear, and there is this infectiousness about his use of swear words that it was not, I don't want to say magnetic, but it was like just really appealing. There's something appealing about that, even though the situations were always negative. Um, and yet at the same time, I wanted to be a good boy, and so I would never use those words. But one time, I was in the apartment building, and my grandma went back into the apartment to get something that she's probably using the bathroom or something. And I was out there for a while, and there was nobody else in this little foyer area. And I just thought, I wonder what it's like to swear, to actually say those words. And I was a good boy. I did not say those words, but I just thought, I just want to know what it feels like to say those. And so in this burst of cussing, said every swear word that I could think of, just so I could know what it felt like.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so I did that, and it was sort of, didn't seem like that big of a deal because I didn't understand then that there was no real magic in the words. It was the context that fueled that, and it was the situation that you're in where those words felt cathartic or whatever. And I sort of realized that later. And so when it comes to actually swear words, like cuss words, the F word and all of that, people have different opinions about that. People, talk about, hey, some people will say swear words are good because they release stress. They help control emotion. They're a release valve for, emotional pressure or whatever. And I think that they could serve that function maybe, but the fact that we're told not to do it suggests that there's probably a better way to release those pressures, and there's probably a better way to have catharsis in those situations. In fact, what I notice is that when people revert to swearing, it's sort of like it's usually because they're in a situation that they shouldn't be in to begin with. It's you have like some type of chaotic situation that you lost control over, and then you swear, and it's like, well, if you had better control over the situation, that you wouldn't even be in that situation to begin with. But then also there are other ways to manage emotions other than that. And so that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is I think that swearing is often a reaction to powerlessness. And like, there's nothing else I can do. And so you just say, F it or whatever. And, and, and it feels somehow powerful. And swearing a lot of times can feel like, by choosing to use this word that is considered a cuss word, you're sort of, you're your own person. No one can tell me what to do, and I say it however I want to say it. And there is this kind of short-term feeling of power that you get. And I think that there's something to that. And this is why a lot of times in stories and novels and in movies and stuff, and in real life, it's people who are um disempowered, people who are oppressed, that they tend to swear a lot. And it's funny too, because like when people who are not oppressed and who are not uh you know in those types of situations, when they want to sound real and they want to sound street, well, then they tend to use swear words, as a way of saying, I'm with the people. But all of that stems from this powerlessness. And so I think that swearing a lot of times is sort of this expression. It reveals an underlying powerlessness. And so I always look at that and say, okay, I get why people are swearing, but it should be an indicator that either you have a sense of powerlessness, and it would be more fruitful to look at why you are powerless and try to find empowerment, instead of just the short-term sugar of swearing. Look for a way to change that situation so you're not so powerless, and then look for better ways to manage your emotions and to have catharsis and to solve the problem that you're in instead of just yelling at it. And so those are some thoughts on cuss words, and that's sort of spiraled out of control. I didn't think that I would have that much to say about it, but sorry about
That's all
that.
right. I think it'll be helpful to folks because people do kind of, there are those who kind of stay more big picture, and there are those who kind of like to drill down and be like, okay, what does this mean for this in my life? And maybe I'm inferring that people are struggling with that or wondering about it. So I think your response was helpful. Let's merge onto a different lane of the highway of verbal pollution and talk a little bit about slandering and gossip and just the weightiness of that, because I do feel like that is a lane, an area of the pool that many of us find ourselves swimming in, whether we are either a part of it or hearing it. And Greg had some pretty stern things to say about that, and then I think that taps into what you wanted to circle back to about Diablos, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, well, first of all, what I would say, and I've been really struck by this over the last, few weeks as we've been kind of working on this series, but I love in John 17, when Jesus is praying for his disciples and for us, His prayer is that we would be one in the same way that the Father and the Son and the Spirit are one. And so that same profound unity of the Trinity, that's what he prays that the church would have. And now these are people, especially his disciples, who he's got right with him as he's praying this to the Father. Uh, you have like an Antifa guy, a zealot, and you've got this alt-right guy in Matthew, and they are both together as part of his discipleship. And neither one of those betrayed Jesus. They were faithful to Jesus. It was this other guy, Judas, who betrayed Jesus. And so the fact that you have this radical opposite ends of the extreme, and they are both disciples of Jesus, that means that there's unity can happen despite conceptual and ideological diversity. And so Jesus's prayer is not that they would all agree. It's not that they would all be the same. It's that they would be unified, that they would be one. And I just look at slander and gossip, and they are both inherently disunifying. They are both inherently about saying that person is not good enough. That person is not one of us. That person is other. That person is less than. That person is an idiot. That person is, and it's just always about saying we are different than that person, and that person does not belong. And it's anti-oneness is what it is. And so on the basis of Jesus's prayer, slander and gossip fundamentally go against what Jesus wants for us. And so I think that is compelling. And then when you look at that gossip is one of the words for that is diablos. Well, that makes total sense, because when we're gossiping about other people, we are making a judgment. We are accusing them of something. And that is what the devil is. The devil is the accuser. And that's all slander and all gossip is there's an inherent accusation there. We are prosecuting this other person. And I think that we are called as Christians to not be prosecutors, but to be defendant, to be a defense counsel for others. And so it's just literally the opposite of what we are called to be doing. And that's how I think those are all related. That's how I've put it together in my mind. And that language about diablos and and the prosecute, how did you say it? The prosecutorial nature of gossip and slander. Paul Eddy sort of brought all of that to our attention on Saturday, and I just think that really ties this together in a nice way. So, yeah, that's my answer to that. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it, and the only thing I will add to that is, again, I think these are things that. It's interesting. The things that I'm just going to say professed believers seem to be really up in arms about. And I don't mean that negatively. Well, yeah, I did. Seem to be really passionate about, seem to really care about, seem to be really vocal about, and it feels like they are combating one another. It's never about this. It's never about gossip or slander.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a pretty big deal. I'm not saying other things aren't important. I just find it fascinating that it's never this. Yeah. In fact, I feel like people are participating in this.
Yeah.
And
so that's so funny.
As one that can admit that, yeah, it is tempting to kind of to participate in gossip and slander. The one thing that I try to be mindful of, and I try to ask myself is what is the need that I am trying to fill by engaging in this practice, in this conversation that is gossipy or slanderous? And because you're right, you are automatically, inherently othering the subject of the slander and gossip. You are automatically trying to devalue who they are, their stance, their opinions, their perspective. And it could be from a stern belief that you are right, and maybe you are. It doesn't mean right doesn't mean going about it in wrong behaviors, right? Right doesn't mean you prove yourself right by behaving wrongly or badly or inappropriately. You can be right, and you can stand for right, and you can speak right and truth without devaluing, dehumanizing, and denigrating others. othering
That's
others.
great
And so,
alliteration, by the way. Holy cow.
thank,
Man.
thank you. Yeah. So what is the
Uh,
need? What is the need?
I think
And
that's good.
yeah, a lot of times that takes a minute to process and go through, and you'll find yourself just kind of backing away and
Yeah.
being a bit more quiet. So
Yeah. But you are just spitting wisdom here. And that is like, that would have been a good nugget. I hope you have a nugget because you just blew one there. So
well, just remember if my nugget seems meh, let's just remember that. Let's just remember this part of the show and say, okay, that was the real nugget. But speaking of and so speaking of nuggets, I think we can go there.
You
But I
think so?
just did want to say, like, obviously Greg felt there was a time crunch because when he literally was like, "Oh God, 11:04, I'm just getting warmed up." What do
Yeah.
you mean you're just
Yeah.
getting warmed up?
Right.
So who the heck knows what was left out, but hopefully we will
I think he got to most of it. So I
Okay.
do. So
Yeah, he kind of started to go fast and furious there at the end.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hopefully there wasn't too much there. All right, awesome.
Yep.
Do you have any more pearls of wisdom, sir?
I don't even know what I'm going to do for my nugget yet, but
Okay.
so, yeah.
Okay. So with that, we'll go to nugget time. And to give you a moment to process and think, I'm going to share my nugget, and I'm straight ripping off from the Psalms.
Oh,
because
perfect.
I know. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord. And that was when I was a new believer, that was a passage that I reflected on quite a bit. And as I've grown in my faith and grown wiser, I apparently have felt the need not to do that so much, which is a
Whatever.
problem. And so I felt the Lord gently saying, "Hey, let's come back to your first love, and let's remember the importance of this. So let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord." I think that is so important because, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And whatever you are speaking, I think it's important to pay attention to. And I think that does tie into what Dan was saying about swearing. It ties into what we were saying about dehumanizing and denigrating others. It plays into how we are treating others and the kind of representative of Jesus that we want to be. And so, I think it's so important to guard our hearts and to invite the love and of Jesus, just to burn away the things that are not of him or like him. And a good barometer of that is like how we are speaking, the words that are coming out of our mouth. And so they do matter. They're very important. And gosh, I would love to be known as a person that loves, that uplifts, that unifies, that blesses, that speaks the truth in love and not denigrate and demean and dehumanize and downcast and divides and all of that stuff. And those things, we are known by what we say. And so I just want my words to be pleasing to him. And that is a renewed prayer for me.
That's awesome. What is the address of that Psalm verse?
1914.
1914. Okay. That was a good year for Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my nugget is but that was a good nugget. I wish we would have ended with that one. But I did need the time to think about what my nugget would be, so I guess we couldn't. But I'll just say that I'll go back to when I was talking about imperatives and how when God is telling us in these imperatives to do these things, it's because that's where we have power. And I think few places we have more power than our voice and what we say and how we speak. And this isn't just what we say with our mouths. This is what we say with our memes. And that's so important in our culture because memes are kind of the new logic now for some reason.
Yeah.
And they're disguised as angels of light. I mean, they use humor and they use cultural references, but they use that in a way to humiliate and to denigrate others. And I guess my nugget then is that what we say, you got to think of it as a power. And instead of just speaking, um, I think it'd be good, and this is what I'm challenging myself to do, is to ask myself explicitly, what do I want to get out of this? What is my goal here? Because I think so often we just speak, and all of our goals and our um, what our incentive is for saying that is it flies under the radar. And if we were to see what we're really trying to do here, I think that would help us to, tap the brakes on some of the less godly things that we do and say, because I think that because this is where our power is, Greg spent a lot of time warning us about the damage that our language can do. But I think on the other hand, too, man, there's so much potential for good that could happen here. And like, some of the other imperatives are things like build one another up. And boy, I have the potential to build another person up. And I know that there have been people in my life that the things that they have said to me have set me on a Christ-like course and set me on an empowering course that have just made my life so much better. And it all goes back to conversations and things that people said to me. And talk about power, talk about a return on investment. I mean, my life could have been a disaster if it wasn't for loving Christians who had stepped in and talked to me and spoke to me and spoke wisdom to me. And that's power. How you treat other people with what you say to them can have decades of blessings. And to think of that when you go into these situations, how could I say something here that will have a decades long positive impact on their life? Because my little digs and stuff are really damaging, and definitely you don't want to hurt people and all of that, but also look at the opportunity for building them up and for filling their heart with light. And I guess that would be my nugget.
I love it, Dan. Good job. All right, guys. Well, that is our show for today. We just want to say thank you, as always, for tuning in and for your engagement. We look forward to chatting with you guys at 4 p.m. Central. Hey, remember, so we've got one more week of political distortions. And so if you're still learning and participating in the Learn-a-thon, you can still log those hours. It's just been really cool to see the different ways that people are engaging with that aspect of the series. And don't miss the final sermon for the series, and then circle back with Dan and I next Tuesday as we carry on the discussion a little more. Have a great week, you guys. Oh, Dan, I didn't tell them. Where do they send their questions, comments,
oh my
praises?
Goodness. Oh, that would be right here, right down here.
Done and done. Right there.
That was close.
That was close.
Yes.
All right, guys. Now we're ending. Have a great week.
See ya.